Got him, big one. That's what I'm talking about. Oh yes, stay on there, fish. Oh yeah, big largemouth, that's what I'm talking about. Yes. Oh, there we go. What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Fish at the Moment. Today I am on Lake 10 Killer. We are fishing in the middle of September, toughest time of the year. And man, I was making the #1 mistake anglers make in this fall transition this morning. I was chasing schoolers, catching a bunch of little fish. I finally got my head right, started picking up my football jig and going after some few big bites, and it paid off in the first 15 minutes. That's what I'm talking about, guys. I'll explain what I'm doing, how I'm doing it here, and how you can avoid making the #1 mistake during the fall transition. Okay, let's get a weight on this guy really quick. 3 pounds, 2 ounces. Solid 3-pounder, great fish out here in September. Let's get him back in the lake, get back over that spot, and explain what we're doing here. Man, there we go. Got that fish on the Fish at the Moment Offshore Jig by Jewel Bait Company. It's in the peanut butter and jelly color, and I'm throwing a green pumpkin rage craw on the back. I caught that fish throwing this jig in a brush pile straight ahead of me here. Again, it's the middle of September. We actually just had the first couple cool nights of the fall this week. It was about 50 degrees this morning, and that means that these fish are going to start migrating into the backs of the creeks and start keying on shad. And a lot of these fish today have actually been schooling, blowing up on the surface, and I caught a ton of fish actually on a drop shot and a few on a top water, just fishing for these schooling fish off these big points. One thing that happens though is that a lot of those fish are your smaller fish, your maybe 10 to 14-inch bass. But a lot of your bigger fish actually don't school, they don't chase the shad. Instead, they relate to hard structure and hard cover like the brush pile I have marked right out here. That means that you have to resist the temptation to chase those schooling fish if you're in a tournament and you want to try to catch bigger fish, or if you just are tired of catching 12-inchers. One of the best ways to do that is pick up a bait like a football jig, or maybe a deep diving crankbait or a big swim bait. Key on trying to get maybe 5 to 7 bites a day in the same areas where those fish are schooling. Those fish will school on these points and stuff like that, but look for the isolated pieces of cover around where those fish are schooling. Key on them with a bottom bait like a jig, and you'll find that a lot of those bigger fish are sitting up on the bottom underneath those schoolers in the brush, on the rocks, things like that. You'll catch a lot bigger fish.
This is especially important if you're a tournament bass fisherman. A lot of guys that fish during the fall transition get caught in that trap of either trying to chase the schooling fish or try to follow those fish back into the creeks and fishing in shallow water. While you can sometimes catch some good fish that are transitioning into the creeks on crankbaits, topwaters, and spinnerbaits, the more consistent and most productive big fish pattern is usually to stay out on the main lake fishing offshore structure where the fish were setting up all summer. However, this is a lot easier said than done. To actually implement an offshore pattern in a tournament in the late summer and early fall takes a lot of dedication. Usually during that August and September time, a lot of the fish are going to be moving back into the creeks, which means there's going to be less fish on those offshore areas. However, the fish that are left out there are going to be bigger than average, and if you can catch 5 of them, then you're going to be doing really well in the tournament. The issue is finding and catching 5 of them. These fish are going to be grouped up on oddball areas and a lot of times in a little bit deeper water than you would expect. In general, I find that most of my big fish I catch during this time of the year are relating to main creek channels where the creek channel swings up against shallower water. Now, shallow water is very relative. For example, here on Lake 10 Killer, where I'm fishing today, shallow water was 30 feet of water next to 80 to 100 feet of water. 10 Killer is a pretty clear lake though and has 3 to 5 feet of water visibility. If you're on a more stained or dirty water lake like a Grand Lake that has 1 to 3 foot of visibility, then these offshore areas might only be in 8 to 15 feet of water and the creek channel might be 20 to 40 feet deep. Either way, the key is finding these creek channel drops that drop from shallow water to deeper water very quickly. In addition to finding the creek channels, it's always helpful if you can find bait fish. The bigger the bait fish, the better. Usually these big bass can be feeding on the biggest forage they can find, whether that is big bluegill, big gizzard shad, big blueback herring, whatever they can get their mouth on. In addition, they want to be around some sort of cover, whether that's rock or brush or grass. In general, you're looking for all three elements: the creek channels, where you have that steep drop off, some sort of bait fish population, and that available cover that the bass can hang around to ambush the bait fish. Finding all of these isn't always that easy, but when you do, you can usually consistently catch those better than average fish. Take this day in Lake 10 Killer for an example. We were fishing in the middle of September. I hadn't been in this lake in over 3 months and had no spots found before I launched my boat. This meant that I had to actually find some offshore areas where I could catch fish. It took me about 3.5 hours of graphing to find my first spot where there was that steep creek channel drop, bait fish, and a brush pile. I then graphed for another 2 hours straight to find another spot that looked similar to this. I did manage to find another brush pile that's set up the exact same way, and you'll see what happens.
Oh man, got him. There we go. Oh my gosh. Finally. I messed up the angle on this brush pile that I was finding, so I was using the live scope to put a drop shot down there. Oh yes, that's a good one. Another brush pile. Finally, took me a while to find one, but now that I found one, got a good one here on the drop shot. Oh, there we go. Another solid keeper right there. Found my second brush pile. I really messed up the angle on this. The wind's blowing from a weird direction. I need some spot lock. Actually, I'm getting a mini cut of Ultrix put on my boat here in the next week or so I'll be able to spot lock on these spots. But I was using that live scope to basically find that brush pile and then pitch a drop shot down to it, and boom, got that fish in the boat. I knew there were good ones down there. You can see on my 2D sonar and on the down imaging that these fish were good quality. And then was able to pick them up with that drop shot. So solid fish. Number 2, taking a long time to find these spots, guys. It took me like 2 hours of graphing to find this one brush pile. But when you find them, catch good ones. Ignore the schoolers, go after those bigger fish offshore. You're gonna be sitting pretty if you're fishing a tournament or just wanna catch some big ones. I mean, this isn't like a giant, but it's a 2-pound, 13-ouncer, almost a 3-pounder. And if you can get 5 of these in the boat, you're winning pretty much every tournament out here right now. So that is some good stuff right there. I want to get back on that top, see if I can get another one in the boat. There we go. Oh man, there we go. Got that fish in the old drop shot. Just throwing a robo worm rebar straight shank hook with a 6-inch robo worm on it. It's just kind of like, I think it's the Aaron's Magic. I'm not sure the exact color. Aaron's Morning Dawn, something like that. I'm just Texas rigging that thing so it comes through the brush really well. Putting that with just like a 10 to 12 inch drop shot leader with a 5/8 ounce drop shot weight. And I'm using my live scope down here, guys, to see the brush pile in front of me, pitch down to it. It didn't seem like some of these fish liked when I was doing that on other brush piles. It's kind of hit or miss. I think that this brush pile is so out of the way and not fished very often that I could actually get close to them and drop shot them. It seemed like a lot of the fish today, though, if I got within 50 feet of them, I couldn't get a bite. I actually had to use the marker buoy. I don't have another graph up there yet to do the waypoint method, but I was basically casting from like 100 feet away to hit that spot. And the further you are away from these fish, especially in September, the more bites you're going to get. And I do have a video explaining how to hit these offshore spots, first cast every time when you use a marker buoy or if you're using waypoints on your graphs. So check out that video if you haven't seen it. Got him. fishing a brush pile here. Ski this fish in. Fishing a brush pile here. You can't let your rod go like that in a tournament, but for fun you can. It's always good to keep a little top water on whenever you're fishing the fall, especially when you're fishing offshore, because sometimes you can pick up a stray like 4 or 5 pounder, but usually most of them are just little guys just like that. So good to have a top water tied on, but honestly not really worth chasing those schoolers. If they come up in your vicinity, then definitely by all means fish for them, but in general stick with that jig. You're gonna catch a lot bigger fish for sure.
As you can see, I'm consistently catching a better quality fish off of these spots than I was off the areas with the schooling fish or by just going down the bank. The process of finding these spots though was very time consuming, and it took a lot of concentrated effort to find these areas. If you're fishing for a single day or just on the weekend and you don't plan on fishing a tournament on a lake, this might not be the best approach because it takes so much time to find these spots and you might only catch 3 or 4 fish a day. But if you're fishing in a tournament, this is a great approach to take because all that effort will result in 3 or 4 really good bites. And then if you can mix in 1 or 2 schooling fish or a fish down the bank throughout the day, you're going to be doing well in pretty much any tournament you fish in that August and September time. This makes this a really effective tournament strategy. It's maybe not the best for fun fishing, and if you are trying to find bigger fish in the fall and are struggling, I would highly recommend getting on your graphs, driving around on offshore structure like I mentioned, and focus on getting 3 to 5 big bites a day offshore rather than chasing the schooling fish and the fish down the bank where you might catch 100 fish, but the biggest one is 2 pounds.
Well guys, I'm gonna call it a day. I caught a ton of fish today between the schoolers and those good fish in the brush piles. It just goes to show that in the fall, if you have a bunch of schooling fish in your lake and you're catching a lot of small fish, you can go offshore, graph for some deeper brush piles and structure, and put some better fish in the boat. You're not going to catch a ton of those big fish. You might only get 4 or 5 good bites a day, especially if you already have the fish found. If you don't have them found, it maybe is only a 1 or 2 fish a day deal, but if you're in a tournament and you want a few kickers, it's definitely a great way to go. And if you enjoy catching the schoolers, then go for it. I showed you some tactics and techniques to catch them in this video as well. So hopefully you enjoyed all the content. And if you did, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you learned and what you'd like in future videos. So thanks again for checking out the video, and I'll see you on the next one.